And welcome to the third episode of The Window here at Montgomery Bell Academy. I'm Zach Riven, a junior here at MBA, and with us today is guest Coach Simpson. Thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Zach.
Yes, sir. I figured today we could start out going a little chronologically, starting childhood. I ran into a Tennessean article, and I believe you had a lot of siblings. Is that true?
I did.
Can you kind of talk on that?
Yeah, I had. There were nine children in our family. There were 6 boys and 3 girls, and I had 3 older brothers. My oldest brother, Michael, is 5 years older than me. Then I had a brother named Mark. Neither one of them wrestled. And then my brother Pat and I. Pat's a year older. He's the head coach at Father Ryan, and been there for 45 years. And then myself, I have a younger brother named Jim and a younger brother, Paul. Then I have 3 sisters, Sue Ann, Margaret, and Kathleen.
Do they play any sports?
My youngest sister played a little softball. She always threatened to wrestle, be the first girl wrestler ever in the state of Tennessee. She probably could have beaten just about anybody. She was pretty tough. But that was it. My older brothers didn't play sports in high school.
Were there ever any family matches amongst y'all?
Occasionally we would have that. It was most large families. You have a lot of wrestling matches, settle any disputes, and we weren't any different than anybody else. We had a large house. We grew up off of Belmont, and they called these 4 square houses. And so we had a huge bedroom where all 6 boys were in the same room, and we would eventually, about every other day, get into a scuffle, and it would shake the chandeliers on the bottom floor, and somebody down there would see the chandeliers and hear them shaking, and they'd come running upstairs, and we would always, we're not doing anything.
Am I right in saying there was 1 bathroom? Is that also correct?
That is correct. We had one bathroom at the time. Eventually, we got a second one. We had the back porch of our house was a latticed porch, and we took that off and added a small den and another bedroom. And in the small den, we had a tiny bathroom that you could barely turn around in.
I bet that was rough.
It was rough, but it was run military style. That was for sure, because we had all the kids in my house, my mom and dad, my grandmother and her 3 sisters.
Oh wow!
And we all in one bathroom. So we took turns doing it. The boys would start waking up at 5 in the morning to go to the bathroom, so that we could make room for all the adults. So it was organized.
I can imagine. So wrestling, how did you get into it? Where did that begin?
So it's kind of an interesting, funny story. My parents liked to keep us very busy. They had to with all these kids. And so they would, get us involved in baseball and anything else. And so we were actually ice skating at the time. The ice skating arena back then was the Municipal Auditorium, which is still here. Mm-hmm. And so we would go down and ice skate there for fun on Friday nights. And at the time, my oldest sister was dating a wrestler from Father Ryan. We didn't know what wrestling was, and there was no clue to it. So one night we went to ice skate, and they had too many people on the ice, so they wouldn't let us out on the ice. So my parents said, well, what do y'all want to do? And we decided we'd go see what this wrestling thing was about. So we went and watched Father Ryan wrestle, and it was probably the greatest event I've ever seen. We hung our skates up that night and said, that's what we're doing.
Wrestling?
Then in wrestling, I was probably in the 5th grade at the time. Of course, at that time, there was no wrestling for kids our age, and we just had to watch it until we got to be 9th graders.
And then I'm assuming you wrestled all 4 years of high school.
I did.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to Father Ryan.
Okay.
So, yeah, I wrestled all 4 years, as my younger brothers did as well. And then after high school, my brother Pat and I were at MTSU and wrestling for MTSU, and then my brother that's a couple years younger than me, Jim, also came to MTSU, and we all wrestled there.
So when it came time to, that's awesome by the way, but when it came time to decide where you were going to wrestle in college, was that a hard decision? Did you have kind of choices that you had to choose from?
Not a lot of choices. My brother Pat was a really good wrestler, and he was recruited to go to MTSU. MTSU showed interest in me, but I was kind of torn between going to college and going to the military.
Okay.
And so my brother Pat and my mom finally talked me into just go ahead and go to college and wrestle, and then after that, if you want to go military, go ahead. So I went to MTSU and fell in love with wrestling more than I ever did.
Wow. So this is kind of like a big leap here, but how did you get from wrestling in college to now head coach, varsity wrestling, and did you know that coaching was something that you wanted to do when you were still wrestling yourself?
Well, you as a college athlete, you're always looking, what are you going to do when you finish competing? And for wrestlers, there's no pro leagues. You can either go for the Olympic team or go coach. And so for me, it was go coach. And I enjoy wrestling a lot, and it became part of my life and what I wanted to share with kids. And that's what I chose to do. And I learned a lot in college and wanted to share that with the kids that I got to coach. So coaching and teaching became, what I wanted to do. I wanted to get back to kids.
Okay. Have you coached anywhere other than MBA?
I have. It's a long history. I stayed actually in college for one more year and was the assistant coach for MTSU.
Okay.
And then I went on to Father Ryan and coached there for a year.
Okay.
And I realized at that point that if I wanted to be a head coach, Father Ryan wasn't going to be the place because my brother Pat was there, and I needed to move on. So I went to Memphis, excuse me, and coached at Bishop Byrne High School for 3 years. Went from there over to Kirby High School in Memphis and started a brand new program, and I was there for 5 years. Then wanted to get back to Nashville, where my family is from, and my wife. So we moved to Hendersonville, and I was there for 6 years. And now I'm at MBA. Now this is my 29th year.
Wow. How do those other places kind of compare, contrast to MBA? Good ways, bad ways?
Well, the first school I was at as a head coach was Bishop Byrne, and it was a really good school. It was a small school, and I really liked it there a lot because it was the same kind of value I had. And then, I just moved on because my family was getting bigger and wanted to reach out and do some different things. So I moved over to Kirby High School, which is my first experience in a non-Catholic high school.
Okay.
And it was good. A lot of kids were there, were great. One of the greatest things about all this is I'm still friends with most of my wrestlers from all those years back.
That's neat.
And we're staying in contact, and it's a lot of fun.
Going back to what we were talking about a second ago about going player to coach,
Mm-hmm.
What was that transition like, and did it help being a player in coaching?
It absolutely helps to be a player and a coach because as a player, you understand the anxiety, the work that you need to have to be a good wrestler. And as a coach, understood that role. And I try to press that upon my wrestlers to have the same type of drive, the same passion for it. They all don't have that same. I've learned that over the years. Their drive and passion is different than mine. Mine is a much greater passion and a desire than what they have, because it's just different. But they all have some passion, they all have some desire, and it's my job to find what that is and to draw it out of them to be the best they can be.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes.
Kind of switching gears here, either coaching or wrestling yourself, what's been the biggest mistake, and then how did you learn from that?
Well, for wrestling, biggest mistake was not putting in more time in college.
Okay.
I put in what I thought was enough time, but after being a coach, I realized I could have done more, because I just, you find the differences between, what you were doing and what you could have done. And as older I get, the more mature I get to understand the things I could have done better.
Okay.
I'd have practiced better, I'd have eaten better, I'd have done the things better back then than I did. If I could go back, I'd do better. But this is just, every kid goes through this. So the mistakes I made probably was the lack of training, the lack of diet, the lack of nutrition,
Okay.
the things that we have today that are real smart to make a better athlete, I wished I had back then. And that would be probably the biggest mistake I made as an athlete. As a coach, is probably expecting more out of the kids than they were able to give.
Okay.
I'm really driven hard, and I try to push them hard. And so I've learned over the years that I've got to push them just enough to make them better. And if I push them too hard, it pushes them away.
Okay.
So those are the things that I've learned to be better at as a
Okay.
coach.
And then now as a coach at MBA or really anywhere, when you hire assistant coaches or look for people to help you, what do you look for?
People who love the sport.
Okay.
If you really love the sport, you're going to dive in and do the things that we need to do to make our kids better. I like for coaches to have compassion for the kids. I can't expect our kids to achieve great things and to drive them through the wall to try to get there. They've got to love it along the way, because if you drive them too hard, they won't like it.
Okay.
They don't like the sport. And so for a lot of coaches in any sport there is, some coaches drive too hard to achieve what they think is right. And you got to realize what the kid can and can't do.
Because they end up pushing them away.
They push them away. And so the fine line is, how do you push a kid to achieve greatness for him?
Okay.
For me, I want all my kids to win a state title. Is that likely? No. For some kids, they might be the best they could probably ever do is a sixth place in the state, and I have to be real happy with that. And I've come to terms with that, and over the years, just saying, this is good. You've achieved all you could do, and that is great.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then next one here, how do you get your players to become a team? So whether that's each year when you kind of have people coming in or when you're kind of starting up a team.
Yeah, so to develop a team, wrestling is an individual sport, but it's also a team sport. And that's hard for a lot of people to see. They just said, well, you got some individuals. And I said, yes, we do. But they make up the team. And I learned this years and years ago at a coach's clinic. I listened to an old coach from UTC named Heath Esslinger, who was a very talented coach and a real good person. And he talked, this is probably 25 years ago, he talked about a lot of coaches just work hard with the best kids on the team. And the kids who aren't so good, they don't give them a lot of attention. And he goes, for you to win dual meets, you got to make those kids better who are not your best wrestlers, who need the most help. And so that hit home to me that I've got a lot of kids on my team that need our help. And so we spend a lot of time with that. And doing that, it develops more team spirit. And then we work with the leadership of the team, whether the captains, the seniors, the guys that are looked up to, and kind of coach them along the way.
Okay.
Talk to them beginning of the year, expectations, how to include everybody on the team, and how important it is for everybody on the team to feel the importance, whether you're good or bad.
Right.
And that's how you develop a team, is everybody is together.
Yes, sir. That's a good point about how wrestling can seem like an individual sport. So I guess that makes it harder to like enforce the idea that it's really a team sport.
It is. It's a tough thing to break through for some people, but for us to have a competitive team, we have to develop the kids who are good, and we have to develop the kids who are not as talented, and to bring them as far as we can.
Okay.
And they feel an importance to the team.
That makes sense. Do you remember the biggest surprise that came when you first started coaching at MBA? Whether with wrestling or not related to wrestling?
Well, wrestling-wise, or just in general, is the commitment of the boys here at MBA. Surprising me, the amount of work that our boys put in. That's been a surprise, because at the other schools that I've been to, there hasn't been that. And it was refreshing to see the commitment that the boys have to academics, to trying to be the best person they can be, to be the best athlete they can be. And it's been a great experience. What MBA does for the boys is extraordinary. And I know most of the boys here don't know that until 20, 25 years from now. But it's great to see.
Yes, sir. Tell me about the 3 most influential people in your life.
3 most influential. I would say probably the first person would probably be Bobby Garman. He was my high school coach when I was at Father Ryan. He drove us hard, and we worked hard. We really worked hard, and his commitment and ability to work hard to achieve what we wanted. He's still alive, and I still see him. He called me before the Father Ryan match this year. He's still involved. He's much older and can't get around as well, but he's still sharp in the head and interested in me, and I appreciate that. Another person I would say would be Gordon Connell, my college coach. He was pretty special to us. He wasn't much older than us. It's hard to believe. He was probably 26 years old, 27.
Oh, wow.
And when I was in college. After college, he went to Macaulay, and he's still around.
Okay. His
grandkids are wrestling for Macaulay, so I see him quite a bit during the year. And we're still great friends and still talk all the time. Probably the next influence on me for wrestling would be my brother Pat.
Okay.
His hard work, the ethics that he has for wrestling, and just he's been a great example for me and for all my brothers.
Nice. Describe your ideals for MBA wrestling.
My ideals is that we get the most that we can out of each kid. We've had some kids here who are very talented and win multiple state titles. We just graduated one last year, Gabe Fisher. To see him achieve, 3 state titles was pretty special. And then we have kids on our team who can barely start, but they give a lot. And for me, that means as much as anybody who wins a state title, is to see the effort and the desire that the kids have to work hard, to achieve all they can achieve, and be happy with what they've done. And that, to me, is ideal, that they understand where they are in the sport and get the most out of it.
Yes, sir. If you had to give like a percentage of how much of wrestling is mental versus physical, what would you?
Probably say it's probably 80% mental,
Oh, wow.
and the other percent is physical. It helps, in high school to be really strong. The stronger, the better. But you can watch the sport. You can watch guys who are very talented, and if they're not mentally strong, they can lose to people who are not very talented. It's all about confidence, and that's one of the things that we work on is the confidence in the kid, and that's probably one of the hardest things we have to pull out, because it's hard to go in there and wrestle in a physical sport like it is, and to get beat on and keep competing and keep coming back. It's very hard. It takes a lot of character. It probably, to me, is one of the greatest sports ever, because it humbles you. A lot of people don't want to wrestle because they hate to lose, and you're going to lose. You're going to lose big when you first start until you finally learn how to do this. But it tells me a lot. Those guys who walk out of here as seniors who've wrestled, I have a tremendous amount of respect for, because they've been through the fire, and they may not all be state champs, but they're all champs in my mind.
Yes, sir. Last couple of questions here. If you had to give advice to future coaches, what would it be? And then what's the best advice you've received?
Oh, let's say the future, I just tell them to don't expect them to be like you, to work hard to bring out the best in each kid. Each kid is different. In wrestling, it has a lot to do with body type. Sometimes you get real tall, skinny kids. Sometimes you get real short, stocky kids. They can't do the same type of thing, so you got to be flexible as a coach to recognize when a kid needs help, recognize when you need to speak and pick the kid up and help him get through the day. Some days you just have tough days. And when those happen, you just got to be able to walk out of the room and say, okay, I did the best I could today. It wasn't my best, but it was the best I could do. And tomorrow, I'll come with a new attitude, and we'll do some new things.
For sure.
What was your next question?
This one was not on the sheet, but I bet you could answer it. What's your favorite move in wrestling?
My favorite move? Oh,
your
Lordy.
go-to.
Oh, no.
Pin down.
Well, I was kind of an upper body wrestler, and I was not a conventional wrestler. A lot of conventional wrestlers like to shoot and attack legs. I got better at that as I became a coach, and so I like to throw headlocks and like to do body locks and fancy stuff and throw people through the air, and then the crowd just screamed. That's what I like to do, and I had a lot of success with that through college. But the longer I coached, I became a better wrestler. I had to spend more time in the details of what most kids could do. All kids can't be throwers, and most kids can shoot in on legs and do things like that. So that made me a better coach by learning all the techniques of all the things that I wasn't good at, and it made me a better coach.
And then our last question here is, how do you define greatness?
Oh, Lordy. I know what most people define greatness as, winning the Super Bowl or being a state champ or doing something like that, but I do not. Greatness to me is achieving all that you can achieve, and that you competed at the best of your ability. And when you do that and you walk out of my room at the end of the year, that's achieving greatness. And I I don't look at each kid and saying, well, he was my best wrestler because he won 3 state titles, or, he was my best wrestler because he did this and that and the other. I tell my best wrestlers are the kid who come in with the best attitude, who work hard and do the best they can. And when they do that, they're my champs.
Totally.
And these kids who have gone through the grind of wrestling and do all those the right way, they really turn out. And when they turn out to eventually get married, raise a family, and have a wife, and they take care of them in the right way, and they raise children in the right way, those are the champs.
Yes, sir. Well, that concludes us for today, unless you have anything else you'd like to add. Thank you so much for doing this and being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, and go Big Red.
Yes, sir.